Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of our podcast with industry leaders. Today, we have with us Paul Les. So, Paul Les is from Bespin Labs, more about Google Workspace Management and other stuff. So, today, our topic will be around Google Workspace Management and the future of cloud infrastructure. So, stay tuned, and I'm sure you're gonna get blown away with lots of information and lots of good stuff as well. Without wasting much time, I will let Paul introduce himself. So, Paul, who is Paul Liz, and what does Bespin Labs do?
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah. So my name is Paul Lees. I'm the founder and the CEO of Bespin Labs. We are the developers of a product called Patronum, which is responsible for helping organizations with Google Workspace lifecycle management, security, Google Drive compliance, all the kind of things that you'd want to do inside the Google Workspace environment. Myself personally, I know we'll get into this a little bit, but I've been in this industry since around about 2008 when Google first came to the market as a cloud offering, and they offered the Google Apps for Domains product.
Awesome. So you pretty much been around since Google started this kind of workspace stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely.
Wow. That means viewers, like I told you, we are with the right person then. So this is somebody that's been with Google from the start in terms of the workspace management. Right. I mean, for anyone who hasn't lived in that admin console all day, like in the first place, what is Google Workspace Management for people who don't even know what that workspace management is?
Yeah, so back in around about 2008 and over time, Google came to market with Gmail. Gmail was a free email platform. It was something that you had to get by invitation only as a consumer, and it spread very, very quickly. So people were inviting their friends, their colleagues into Gmail. Google then released Gmail as a business application with all of the business level, service level agreements built into the platform. And I was currently working in an organization, and I was responsible for the professional services of that organization. And we were seeing organizations being approached by Google to move from email systems that we were managing to Gmail. And so I saw an opportunity to create an organization and services to help those organizations move from their on-premise Exchange email systems. Predominantly, my skills were in the Novell area, Novell being a networking giant at the time, back in the early 2000s. But we were helping organizations migrate into Microsoft Exchange, etc. And so I saw an opportunity that could allow a business to create a migration tool for Gmail and help these businesses migrate data into Gmail. And so that's exactly what I did. Created an organization, built a migration tool, and then started talking to Google and started talking to other organizations that were using the Gmail platform for businesses to help them migrate everything into those environments, everything from their email, their calendars, their contacts from their address book. Everything was being migrated through our migration tool.
Awesome. So for the layman like myself or for anyone out there, so is the workspace the same as the Gmail or like?
Yeah, so this is where things get a little bit confusing. So Google came to market with just the Gmail offering, and then over time they added other applications to that suite. And so Google changed its name from just Gmail to Google Apps, which was a collection of applications for businesses that you could purchase from Google. And that was called Google Apps for Business. Over time, Google added more and more functionality into those particular products, real-time collaboration in Google Docs, They acquired a number of businesses and they changed their name over time from Google Apps to G Suite. And G Suite was a name that Google used for quite a while until the past couple of years, where again they changed the name and had a rebranding and moved it to Google Workspace. And that's where we are today. So you can think of Google Workspace as the evolution and the rebranding of Gmail for Business, put some applications around it, such as Drive, such as documents, spreadsheets, presentations, build all those together, provide them to businesses, rebrand it, and then here we are with Google Workspace. And so obviously with a workspace environment, not only do you have to have the tools, you also need to have the controls over providing your business users access to those environments. And so you have to manage the usernames, you have to manage passwords, you have to manage the creation of those users, the deletion of those users. And so that's really where we as an organization now within Bespin Labs find ourselves helping organizations better manage those particular users inside Google Workspace.
I get it now. Thank you for the clarification. I got it. So basically, you have Gmail, you have Google Drive, you have Google Docs, Google Sheet, Google Slides, Google Meet, all the Google products, most of them all under one place, and that becomes the Google Workspace.
Correct, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you and Bespin Labs are more around the administration of this, make sure that things are very easy, how users move there, how you set permissions and stuff like that.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
Okay.
so we help organizations manage those users, because unlike legacy environments where you have everything built on premise, you can delete a user, you can, or not delete a user. You're not getting charged. You're paying for the physical hardware. Now, when you move to the cloud, you're paying on a per user basis. So if you don't delete or repurpose the accounts, you're getting charged for those accounts. And if your organization is constantly growing and people are leaving and coming and going, your cost base will just increase exponentially. And so one of the things that we help is the correct offboarding of a user that has been added to the Google Cloud, the Google Workspace environment, because the system doesn't own the files that those users have been creating. The user still owns those files. So if you deleted a user and that user had some documentation that was important to the organization, well, those documents would also be deleted. And so with our products, we can make sure that important documents, important emails are retained when somebody leaves the organization and is ultimately deleted, so that you can repurpose or reclaim that license back.
Wow, that last bit sounded a bit scary. So, like, if you delete someone incorrectly, you are actually deleting some files associated with the person. So it has to be rightly managed, that stuff.
Absolutely. So if you've got somebody in your, let's say, your legal department, and they've been responsible for creating a lot of contracts, and those contracts are in their particular Google Drive, if that user again gets deleted, all of their files are deleted. And the only way you can get them back is you have a finite window with Google to restore the user itself. Alternatively, you're going to a backup of that particular user, which can be pretty traumatic to look to try to restore particular items en masse. One of the solutions that we bring to the market is making sure that files are transferred to the appropriate users inside your organization. Google came out in 2017 with the concept of a shared drive, or a team drive as it was called then. And that kind of helps to get around that particular issue, where you can move data to a drive that belongs to the organization, as opposed to an individual user's drive, which belongs to the user, which could potentially be deleted when the user is deleted.
Sorry, I got you. Okay, so for anyone who hasn't lived in the admin console all day, what is so I know you mentioned like offboarding and onboarding of users. for anyone who hasn't lived in that admin console all their life, they don't know law. What is the real job of a Google Workspace admin in 2026 compared to like 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the Google admin's job, just because of the things that Google is doing, you're not looking after servers, you're not looking after complicated permission structures. So it's a fairly straightforward operation. You're creating users, you're potentially resetting users' passwords, you're making sure that the users reside in the correct Google groups. You are making sure that when they start the organization, they have access to the right things and they're being given access to the correct levels of data inside the organization, generally through group management. Now, all of that through the Google Admin Console is just a manual process. So someone joins your organization, you have their name and you have a few details, maybe their personal email address. And so what you would do is you create that account and you then send them the password. You then also need to find out, well, what's this person doing? Which Google groups does that person need to be in order for them to function within the organization? And that might be a structured process in an organization that has particular standard operating models, or it might just be that particular person is similar to somebody else, so I'll just have a look at the groups that the other person's in and I'll just drop them in those particular groups. Sometimes it can be a bit ad hoc, but in the majority, there is a structured process for a Google admin to follow when people are being added to the organization. But it can be a very manual process. So I create a user, I add them to Google Groups, I then speak to the user, they get given access to calendars, they have to join particular chat spaces inside of Google Chat and Google Meet. And a lot of it is, as I said, very manual, or it's very user intensive from the end user's perspective. So that's again some of the things that we do with Patronum is we will come along and automate all of that for the administrator. So the only thing the administrator has to do is create the user the once. Populate the user to specify which departments the user is in, what job titles the user has, all those kind of things. And we can then take that metadata from the Google directory and then provision the user automatically in all the correct Google groups. We'll also make sure that if anybody's been manually added to those Google groups, we can remove them from the Google group so we can maintain security inside the organization. In addition to all of the admin stuff that's occurring around Google Groups and assigning drives and folders, etc., we can also take away some of the burden that the user has to go through, such as accepting calendars. So let's say, for example, user joins an organization and they want to plan their vacation, or they want to have a look at some of the meetings that are being booked for their team. They may have access to a particular calendar. Now in Google, in order to access that calendar, you get shared on the calendar, you have to receive the calendar, you have to add it to your calendar view. There's all lots of steps and processes that you've got to go through. Again, with Patronum, we take that calendar and we drop it into the user's calendar. That's it. So the user doesn't have to do anything in order to jump into the calendar and see everybody else's calendars or the calendars from a particular project, or indeed the company holiday calendar. The same applies to particular chat groups. If you are part of a particular project or you're part of the company as a whole, you might want to join the company all hands Google chat space. Again, with Google, you are invited to that chat space. You're not immediately dropped into the chat space, which can prevent users from participating in those chat communities because they've mislaid the email or they've forgotten to add themselves to that particular chat group. So they might miss important communication. Again, with Patronum, we will automatically make sure that all the users remain in the correct chat spaces. Even if somebody accidentally leaves the chat space, we're going to put them back into the chat space so that any important internal company-based communications can constantly happen, and those individuals are not left out of those communications that are going on.
Wow. Wow. So it looks like the Patronum product is doing a lot of a lot of interesting stuff in making sure that people are in the right places, the right groups, the right chat, the right everything. We'll come back to the Patronum product. But okay, so you did mention at the start that you could delete someone and that can cause all kind of problems because you deleted the wrong person. What are the top 2 silent risks that you see in workspace environment that leaders underestimate until something breaks or a compliance issue appears?
I said the top 2 issues from my perspective. The first one has to be accounts being left wide open. Somebody leaves the organization and they still have access to their own account. They can reset their own password. So even if someone resets the password, if they have forgotten to remove the email and telephone recovery details, the individual user can come back and reset the password and log back into their account, even though they've left the organization. So that's probably one of the first kind of security issues that I tend to see, which is the forgetting of accounts. The other area is the oversharing of files in a Google Workspace environment. And this is not just Google. Office 365 obviously has exactly the same kind of problems where individual users will share files with people. They may share files people just as part of their daily work. They may share files with themselves in a nefarious kind of way where they're wanting to steal data from an organization. But generally speaking, it's the general sharing of files with people in an organization that you've been working with for a long time, and then all of a sudden you no longer work with them. Well, how can I pull back all of that sharing that has occurred? There's no easy way in Google Workspace in order to do that. So if I've been sharing, or not just me, but everybody in my organization's been sharing their files, how do we know who's got access to those particular files? Because if I share a file with anybody and I'm collaborating with them, they also have the permission and the right to share it with somebody else. I don't see that sharing going on. I might be able to look from a proactive perspective, but I don't get notified that, I've shared it with Stuart, Stuart's then shared it with somebody else, and then they've shared it on and so on and so forth. So I don't have the visibility of that. And then a little bonus kind of security issue is files that have been shared with the link. And that's a setting inside of Google Drive or Google Docs where you can share a file with anybody on the internet. The file is completely open. Anybody can access it. They don't need to authenticate to Google Workspace or Gmail. It's just widely available. And there are literally millions of files in organizations around the world that have been shared with the link, and all it takes is that particular URL to be given to the wrong person, and that file is then just publicly available or shared very, very wide in all kinds of corners of the internet.
I think the things that you mentioned, I think some of us, most people are corporate of some of those issues that you mentioned. And I think it's good that you highlighted that. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you did mention, so I think that was launched in 2019, if I'm correct.
Yes, so we kind of started the development and we launched it in 2019, 2020. Okay. Officially being launched in 2020.
Okay, so I know you mentioned a couple of things that you, Bespin and Patronum does or do. So you mentioned a couple of other things. So what, in one sentence, like what is the main thing that Patronum do that native admin console, that's not make it easy for people to do?
There are literally hundreds and hundreds of things that we do in Patronum that the native admin console cannot do. I'll give you a very brief handful of those scenarios. Email signature management. It sounds very, very trivial. A lot of organizations just have a real pain rolling out an email signature to their users. They would typically have to create the user, set the password, log in as that user, copy and paste the email signature from the business into that new user's Gmail settings, get it all set up, hand it over to the user. The user can then tweak that email signature and they go in their own direction. They might change their job titles, etc. And then if a new design comes out for the organization, new branding, etc., rolling that out to users is extremely difficult. Patronum has that just built in. We have a built-in email signature solution where we update everyone's email signature based on a template, based on a particular criteria. So different users can have different email signatures, etc. I'd say another key thing that the Google Admin Console just doesn't do is it doesn't give you visibility over an individual user's files. Whereas if you think back to, again, legacy systems where you had a file server, you could log into that Windows file server, you could log into that Novell, let's go back to the Novell days, that particular file server, and you could see the files that that user had stored in the company system. You can't do that easily within Google. The Google Admin Console doesn't give you that visibility. The only way you could do that is by third-party tools, by the Google APIs, and that's exactly what Patronum gives you. It gives you a very easy window over the files that the user has been creating and sharing. You can help them from a collaboration perspective. You could also assist if that person's no longer in the office. Maybe they're away on vacation. Maybe they're ill. Someone needs access to one of their files. You can log into Patronum, find the file, give it to somebody else, give it to a colleague, and then the work can continue. So you've got two things there that just aren't in the admin console. And then one last one, delegate access. I want access to a colleague's email, maybe again they're on vacation. Can't do that through the Google Admin Console. The only way I can do that without tools like Patronum is to reset that person's password, which is an absolute pain for when that person returns to the office because their password's been reset. They may actually be using their email on their mobile while they're away on vacation or whatever. So you've completely broken all of these things by resetting that person's password. Again, with Patronum, you just click a button and say, gain access to this account, and you get delegated access to someone's email. Again, very, very easy, very, very quick, something that you just can't do through the Google Admin Console.
Wow. There's like a streamlined solution that you have in Patronum.
It's not just about streamlining. We do things that you just can't physically do with the tools that Google give you. So it doesn't matter how many people you throw at a particular problem, there are always going to be elements of Patronum functionality that goes beyond just the automation. It's just you can't physically do them within the native tools that Google provides.
Right. So extra features. So Bespin Labs, if you could fix one part of the user lifecycle for every organization tomorrow, onboarding, role changes, offboarding, name it them, which one would you choose and why?
That's a great question. So I think for me, it would have to be the automated group management of users. Again, it sounds like a trivial issue, but just allowing people to join an organization and being given access to the correct things based on who they are would be an absolute time saver for organizations. Again, from a security perspective, I always go back to the offboarding elements and making sure that when people leave the organization, everything is transferred to the to people left in the business to continue. So that's files, calendar appointments as well. If someone gets deleted, their calendar gets deleted. So if I've got a meeting with somebody, maybe a customer, and I leave and my calendar gets deleted, a lot of my customer appointments get deleted as well. Wouldn't it be great if an organization that when someone left, you could transfer those appointments to somebody else in the organization so those things can continue from a business perspective? So those are kind of things that we do inside Patronum, which I think are massive fixes that should really be part and parcel of the native offering. But I'm glad they're not, because it allows me to provide those particular features inside of Patronum.
Of course. I think I pretty much agree with you on the automated group management, because sometimes, when you join a new organization, you have to now, line up, go to the IT department, ask for permission to be added, and that takes days, sometimes weeks, and all of them out, right? So
I see this as the squeaky wheel scenario as well. So let's say, for example, you're in an organization and you're working away, and all of a sudden you need to do something, and you see that your colleague next to you has complete access to things that you'd like access to. Maybe it's a presentation they've got edit access to and all those kind of things. But you don't realize that their particular role, because they may be senior to you or in a different department, gives them that level of access. But you want that access because you feel like you're missing out. So what you become is the squeaky wheel. So you go to IT and you say, I need access to that system. I need access to that system. And what more often than not, IT are there to help you get your job done. And so what they'll do is they'll have a look at your colleague and they'll say, well, he's in those particular Google groups, which gives them access to those particular files. I'll add you to that area as well. Not knowing that by doing that, they've actually breached some internal security requirements, because now you've got more access than your job title entails, and potentially you have access to things that you don't, or you shouldn't have access to. The problem has been resolved. You're happy because they've managed to tick off one of their tickets, but the fundamental security of the business has now been fractured. Again, with Patronum, the automated group management, we will see that that's happened, and we will remove you from those Google groups to make sure that the business is still compliant when it comes to security. So again, you mentioned queuing for IT. We can make sure that those people who do queue and are requesting things that they shouldn't be given access to actually don't happen.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I like that. I like that. So what does good offboarding look like in Google Workspace now, especially around drive ownership, shared drives, calendar, and keeping business continuity?
Yeah, again, that's a great question. Most organizations, when they do this manually with the Google admin tools, they get options to do a few things. One of them is to transfer files manually from one person to another. The other one is to transfer calendar events from one person to another. Great offboarding from my perspective, and this is what we've built inside Patronum, is to give administrators choice over, first of all, where do the files go? Do we want to give all of the files to a particular user, maybe the manager, which is the default kind of approach? Let's give my manager access to all of my files and just dump them in that person's My Drive. They then just get overwhelmed with all the data from another person, and that data just sits around. It doesn't really do anything. With Patronum, you can specify where particular files go. So we can move some files to a shared drive. So let's say I've got lots of files and I'm leaving. All the shared drive files, all the files that I've shared, can be moved to a particular shared drive, and they can be reviewed by a team who have access to that shared drive. So if there's any files that are redundant, they can be deleted or purged out of the system. So I'm not storing a lot of information that is redundant. Now, files that haven't been shared, well, they may be private to me, they may be works in progress, they might not be as critical as the files that have been shared. So those are the files that can be potentially moved to the manager, and the manager could then ideally and quickly review those files and then decide, well, they're all garbage, let's just delete them, or there are a few files in here that are quite useful, we'll keep them, but we'll get rid of the rest. Again, it's all about choice. It's all about reducing the burden of that process. So that's an area from a drive perspective. You then move through from a priority perspective. For me, calendar appointments. Who has the appointment that I have specified for a particular client? Who gets that appointment? Well, let's move all of that to somebody else. There are also appointments that I have been sent on, or I am an invitee, that I should now no longer be an invitee, because if there's an email that's going to get bounced, I'm going to be in a meeting with people that no longer turn up. If there's been a redundancy at an organization, you might have a meeting that you're expecting 20 people in this meeting. You've booked the largest meeting room, and all of a sudden, there's only 2 people there, and you've wasted the large meeting room and all those kind of things. With Patronum, we can go through all of those appointments and remove the individual who is leaving the organization from those appointments. So we're also cleaning those kind of things up. We then look at other areas from an offboarding perspective, such as your mobile device and the contact details in your Google contacts that get pushed to your mobile. Within Google, you could have employees that are no longer in the business still sat within your Google contacts and therefore on your mobile device. With Patronum, we go through everyone's Google contacts and we make sure that those people that are no longer in the business are removed from the Google contacts. So when I type Paul in my email, I don't get the names of all the Pauls that have left the organization over the years. Those are all cleaned out of other people's Google contacts, which means that they are removed from people's mobile devices. And then we do a lot of other things around transferring of emails to Google shared drives. We have a solution where we can extract all of their emails and store it into a Google Cloud bucket so that you've got all the emails of the individual if you wanted to perform searching for those. We also provide integrations with our own backup tools where we can force backups to be run. And so for me, a good offboarding system is something that will retain all of the data, whether that's Google Drive data, Google Calendar information, etc. Clean things up, removing users from Google Groups, removing users from Google Chat Spaces, removing the details from calendar appointments, removing the details from Google Contacts, making the individual appear as if they never existed in the organization, so that there's no ties back to that person, clearing the Google directory out of any personal information related to that person. All of those things are what I would just class as just good practice from an offboarding perspective.
Good practice from onboarding. Great. So let's just shift a little bit to the automation side of things for a second. Where does automation help most without creating new risk? And what are examples of safe automations versus dangerous automation? I'm asking this question. Maybe there are some users or listeners who are listening to us now and they are thinking, hey, I can automate some of these things myself. So where does automation actually help without creating new risk? And what are some examples of what safe automation versus dangerous automation?
Yeah, so I would see you can automate things through scripts. So you can create a Python script, or you can create a cron job on a server that constantly runs and does certain things, and it calls particular API calls, and you could do you could do a lot of the things that we do in Patronum using scripts. The danger of some of those kind of processes is you are effectively just adding to Google Groups. You are adding to shared drives. You are adding to delegate access. You are very rarely through those automations referencing, should these users be in this particular Google group? Should these users have access to this particular shared drive? Should they have delegate access to these particular mailboxes because they've changed their role? And so if you have an automation that's just script based, it tends to be if this, do that. So it's a case of if I'm part of this department, do this. It's very rare that I see script-based automations saying this user has changed from being a salesperson to being an accountant through a job change or job sharing kind of approach in an organization. So when people move around the organization, it's very rare that we see automated scripts addressing those particular issues. So that opens up a whole gamut of issues from a security point of view, as well as breaking least privilege access kind of best practices and those kind of things. So with Patronum, we're not just saying if this, do that. We're saying if you are a member of a department, you have access to this particular shared drive, for example. But if you're not in that department, well, you don't, regardless of whether or not someone's added you manually or whether or not you've added yourself to a particular area. We're going to clean all that kind of stuff up. So those are the common issues that I see from an automation perspective when it comes to people trying to do this themselves.
Highlighting those security. So let's stay on the security side a little bit. So what security events show up most often for workspace customers? Account compromise, data sharing, OAuth risk, misconfigured groups. Which ones are the most
To be honest, it's not something that we particularly look at from a what's being flagged the most. But what I would see is that if I was going to attack a particular organization, there's a number of vectors that I can go at. The first one is email compromisation. So I'm going to email somebody to try to convince them to log into a particular website. So if I was an attacker, I would create a web page that looked very similar to a password reset page or you've been given access to a document page. And when they click on a particular link, I would then say, oh, your password's incorrect, please re-enter it. And I would then take that person's passwords. Those kind of things can then capture email addresses, passwords, etc. So phishing for me is one of the areas of issue when it comes to security. Now, obviously, Google has a great answer for a lot of that built into the product. There's two-step verification. There's location-specific detection. So if you are logging in from a location that Google doesn't particularly like or doesn't know that you've logged in from there before, it's going to challenge you a lot harder than if you were logging in from your standard desktop in your office. It may ask you to re-verify via two-step verification. So for me, phishing is probably the most common and most frequent security risk. But again, Google has a great answer to that. One of the things that I think isn't being addressed is the sharing of data from Google Drive. Now, it's not specifically security per se, but it's data exposure. And so it's the sharing of files with people that you felt that you needed to give access at one point during the life cycle of a document that then has taken on a mind of its own. And the risk of not knowing where your data is being shared. So for me, while not specifically an account compromised, it's still quite dangerous for an organization to have the data being shared when they have very little, if not zero, control and visibility over who has access to that particular data. There is also the granting of access to particular applications. So somebody could say, I'd like to give ChatGPT access to all of my docs without understanding exactly what that means from a privacy and security. And will that data now be used to create additional models? And will our company data now end up being surfaced in AI-based responses? And there's also other applications that users can tend to just say, well, I'll install that Chrome extension or I'll install that particular gadget that has access to my internal data. So again, it's mainly about access to data rather than particular account compromises that I would tend to see from an organization perspective.
Wow. So I really like that last point of the sharing of data. And I want to have a follow-up question on that. Some time back, not even some time back, I think even quite recently, one of the things that companies are driving for is data-driven institutions. Excuse me. So data-driven companies. So helping company make decisions with data, which means enabling company employees from anywhere in the level of hierarchy to have access to the data. And now it becomes one of the things that obviously a gray area where, attackers can infest and attack the company. So in your opinion, how do you recommend teams balance usability versus control, especially in these fast growing companies where just let people share data becomes a habit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that has become the norm where organizations have just said, let's just collaborate. And the collaboration in all these cloud-based products is phenomenal. Well, the fact that we can have a conversation and we can work on a particular document together, you can then share it with colleagues and I can share it with colleagues, and we can all work on these particular projects and documents. And that's great from a usability perspective because we're just getting on and we're just doing stuff. The problem occurs later down the line when we're no longer actively in a particular document or in a particular looking at a particular set of data, and who still has access to that data. Now, there are features inside of Google Workspace which you can set, and you can say, well, I'm going to allow this document to be shared for 2 weeks, and then that's it. We're going to bring it all back internally. But it's an additional setting. It's something that has to be done. It's something that the user has to think about and set, and it's not the default. Now, if it was a default in an organization where every single document was specified, you can only share for a week, and then you've got to reapply for that share, that would improve security in no end, but it's not being done. So that's where things like, ourselves at Patronum, we can build and we have policies in place from a file perspective where we can say things like, if you're sharing with somebody who's got a Gmail account, you might have to do that in order to get the work done. So we're not going to stop you from sharing with Gmail. But what we will do is after a couple of days, we will remove that access. So the person that you've shared with can do their collaboration, but then you can remove that collaboration so that you're not oversharing those files forever with an account which is, potentially could be insecure. It's not got the same security configuration as a standard Google Workspace account where there's a lot more control. And so with Patronum, we can make sure that the files are only shared for as long as the business deemed necessary. So you might say, Gmail, we're going to go 2 days. Whereas if it's a business address, let's say a week, and then we'll bring it back in to the organization. So it's only shared with the people that we want. Now, obviously, those individuals can request to gain access to the document again, and you can give them access again. But Patronum will come along and then unshare after those 2 days. And so we see that as being a key way of controlling both or gaining control over documents and data while also providing good usability so that the user has the experience that they're used to, which is let's just collaborate and get things done, versus what the business needs, which is we need to make sure that everything is controlled and secured and we're not just sharing everything with everybody and keeping it shared all the time.
Thank you. So lots of people assume that Google is safe by default. Where does that assumption break down? And what do you tell customers about backup and recovery expectations?
Yeah, so I do think Google is extremely safe. I think from a security perspective, the two-step verification, all of the endpoint security that Google has makes Google Workspace one of, if not the most secure platform for doing doing work. However, accidents do happen. You might have an individual whose Windows machine has been infected by a malware, and that individual may have had the Google Drive sync tool on their workstation. Now, that malware Trojan, or whatever you want to call it, on their Windows device may now start affecting the documents on that workstation that are then synchronized to Google Drive. So that's one area where data may be compromised. Another area could be an individual user is just a bad actor and they have maliciously started to delete files because the files aren't accessed on a regular basis. You don't realize that specific files have been deleted. And then there's just the clumsy user where they've deleted files, they've done a bit of a reorganization and they've accidentally dropped half of a project into the trash. And again, because the project was stalled for a couple of months, you've not realized you're now not able to get that information out of the user's trash folder. That data's gone. And the only way you can get that data back is through a backup. And so that's why the team here, we always recommend that everybody backs up their Google environment, whether it's our backup solution or a third-party backup solution. We're not particularly bothered. We just recommend that you back up your data. Our backup solution, again, it's a separate product from the base Patronum, but we back up the emails, the calendars, the contacts, the Google Chats, the user's drive and the shared drives, as well as the Google directory. So we back up everything that's important from a Google Workspace perspective. There's a lot of organizations that have things like Google Vault, and they say, well, we've got Google Vault, and so that's it's good enough. Well, the reality is that it's not. Google Vault is basically an e-discovery tool. It's not a backup solution. We could get into massive details over the differences between e-discovery and backup, but suffice to say that both are valid solutions. The reason why you would have something like Google Vault is for e-discovery being a legal requirement if you want to find an email from either an existing employee or a departed employee that can be then admissible from a court perspective. And likewise with documents, Google Vault will allow you to have access to those particular changes within a document. But again, it's mainly for legal reasons and not disaster recovery purposes.
Okay, there's been a lot of talks about AI. Here, AI here, ChatGPT, Cloudbot, a lot of them. How do you expect AI to change workspace management over the next 12 to 24 months? Is it going to be more automation, more risk, or both?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, there's already a lot of AI being brought into the Google Workspace product offering. If we kind of step automation to the side for a moment, from an AI perspective, you've got the ability for AI to create your Google Slides. Create me a set of Google Slides, and this is the theme. Bang, it will do it, and it's phenomenal. Create a video and put it into a slide. Again, it's absolutely amazing. From a Google Docs perspective, you can Google AI can help write your Google Docs. It can do research. It can bring in other information from other parts of your organization and help you create content inside inside a new document and help you with research, etc. From a automation perspective, Google's added Google Flows directly into things like Gmail. So you can say, if I have an appointment, after the appointment or after a particular Google meeting, please summarize the conversation and email it to all of the recipients. That is great end user automation built directly into the Google Workspace package. I don't necessarily see automation making its way into the administrative world anytime soon. There are, apart from analyzing security logs and having a look at things from a logging and a security perspective. I think from an automation, onboarding and offboarding, I think that may happen, but I don't think it's going to be a priority for any of the organizations anytime soon. So the need for things like Patronum, where it's a very structured approach. If I'm in this particular department, this is what I get. I think AI is unlikely to come into that particular part of the business anytime soon.
There might be one organization just listening and he's telling themselves that, hey, we are fine with the default tools. What is the tipping point where a product like Patronum becomes worth it?
Um, so, so we have customers from one individual user inside an organization to hundreds of thousands of users. So I wouldn't necessarily say there's a tipping point from number of users inside an organization to say, as soon as I get to 35 users, automation becomes a key. It really depends on what it is you're trying to resolve. So yeah, I think probably 30, 40 users, it becomes a pain adding and removing users, and automation absolutely helps there. However, Patronum's a lot more than just the automation features. We've also got the drive elements where a one individual organization, a solopreneur, may have been sharing files with, thousands and thousands of people. They've got no idea where their files are. You would have to click on each individual file and say, who's that shared with and who's this shared with. Again, with Patronum, you can log in and you can just get a list of everybody that you've been collaborating with. So again, it's useful from just the one individual user to the hundreds of thousands of users. Now, obviously, different users and different companies and different organizations have different requirements and different needs and different benefits of using a product like Patronum. But our customers range across the spectrum. We have lots of small, medium-sized organizations, and we have a lot of extremely large global organizations using the platform. So there's not necessarily a particular tipping point when it comes to the use of our product. But I would say automation specifically, you get the real benefit when you start to manage more than, let's say, the 20, 30 kind of mark. When you get to the 50s, and 100 users, if you're not automating from a scripting perspective, then you're basically a busy fool. You just sat there doing things that you shouldn't necessarily be doing. And so that's when I would start to look at automation, even if it's just setting up some scripts to get things done quickly.
Okay, Bespin Labs. Let's give one. I mean, you've given us so much value, but let's give one quick win to our listeners. What is one quick win an admin can do this week to reduce risk or save time?
Wow. One quick win that they could do to save time is install Patronum. Just get it installed. It's easy. You go to the Google Marketplace, you click on install, it asks a couple of questions. You're up and running within a matter of seconds. Once you're in there, give our product a little bit of time to have a look at your drive infrastructure, and then take a look at who your organization's been sharing with. We'll give you a complete breakdown of every single user that your organization has collaborated with. And you might be surprised that you've got a lot of Gmail in there. You might even find that you've got your competitors in there because they may have been partners at one point, but now they are competing with you, yet they still have access to your data. And so I always like it when organizations install Patronum and they have a look at that list and they go, I actually didn't realize we had 10 million files that were shared with the link. We really need to do something about it. We're completely exposed in that particular area. And that is seconds to install. Give it around about 24 hours to analyze your data and then just have a look at what we found from a drive security perspective. In order to do all of the automations and all those kind of things, it's a little bit more invested. It might take 10, 15, 20 minutes to sit down and work out the patterns that you need to match in order to have the onboarding, provisioning, offboarding configured correctly. But for me, the quickest and easiest no-brainer is install Patronum and then have a look at the drive compliance sections to see who you've been sharing your data with.
Thank you. You did mention, we'll be talking a lot about Patronum, but I think you did mention that you also have another product that does backup solutions. What other product do you have? And can you talk a little bit about the backup solution?
Yeah, sure. So we have a backup solution. Like I say, it's a separate product to Patronum. We call it the Patronum backup solution. And as I mentioned previously, I'm not quite sure if this translates, but it's like Ronseal. Ronseal is I'm based in the UK. It's a paint, and it does exactly what it says on the tin. So from a backup point of view, we just back up your Google Workspace environment. And as I mentioned, it's your email, it's your calendars, it's your contacts, it's your Google Chats, it's your users' My Drives, it's your shared drives, some of them or all of them. You are in control as to what you back up. We will back up everything by default 3 times a day. If you want to, you can increase that through connecting the two products together 27 times a day. So you're going to get the 3 default, and then we can run another backup every single hour of the day. That's a little bit excessive, but it just shows you the power that we've got when it comes to backing up your data. So for me, the backup solutions are just tried and tested. They're not the most exciting things to talk about, but if you don't have them, you're in a world of pain when something goes wrong. It's good that a backup solution is boring because you don't want it to have all fancy bells and whistles. It does exactly what you expect it to do. It backs up your Google environment. I also wanted to mention that in addition to backing up, we also have an archiving solution where we can archive a user's email as part of an offboarding process. So maybe you have transferred all the files in one direction, but you still want to retain the email and you're not relying on a particular backup. You want to put it in a storage bucket, which you control. You can do that through the Patronum offboarding archive solution. So those are the kind of offerings that we've got. And we're constantly evolving our products. There are other similar products in the marketplace, but they seem to be very stale. They've gone very static. They've not really moved on for, I'd say, about a decade, unfortunately. We are constantly adding new features. We're constantly talking to customers. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I've been in this industry since 2008. I've seen things grow. I can now feel the direction in which these organizations go, and we align ourselves with that direction. And so we know the areas that customers will have issues. We talk to the customers, we validate those particular issues, and then we build solutions to address those issues. And we're constantly doing that.
Awesome. Right. So, Paul, where can people learn more about Bespin Labs and Patronum, the backup solution? the archiving solution, and what should they look at first? And your last words to the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn. So look me up on LinkedIn. So it's Paul Lees on LinkedIn. You can see my histories, the kind of organizations that I've created. If you're looking at the company, we've got Bespin Labs. So it's bespinlabs.com. But if you're interested in Patronum, it's patronum.io. Again, if you just do a search for Patronum, Google Workspace will pop up straight up in the Google searches. If you want to get involved, we have a Google community, which is completely free. Our community is for Google Workspace administrators. We get together on a monthly basis. We have Google Meets on a monthly basis. We have a Google chat space where we collaborate and discuss issues within the Google ecosystem. Again, you can join that completely free through the website. And if you want to install the product, you can install Patronum Management via the website. Just click on the link to install. You get 30 days for free, so give it a try. You know, you got nothing to lose. The backup solution, you can try the backup solution for 15 days. Again, click on the link, install it, give it a try. If you don't like it, you can uninstall it. Both products, we're not going to follow up with any aggressive salespeople. In fact, we don't have salespeople in the organization. We don't chase you. We feel that our products are great. They are the best on the market. We don't think you're going to get a better deal anywhere else. And so if you're interested in using the product, come and install it. It's completely risk-free. No credit cards needed. If you're happy, you can just click on a link and purchase. You don't even have to speak to anybody. But if you do want to speak to somebody, we've got the team available from a chat perspective. You can set up a Google Meet where we can demo the products and spend some time with you to talk you through how to get the most out of the product. It's entirely up to you how you interface with us. We are not dictating the approach. You know, you don't have to give us all your information just to get a sniff of the product, install it, have a go. If you want us, we're here. If you don't, you can just go ahead and install and purchase without even talking to a human being. But like I say, the patronum.io website is probably the best place for information with regards to both the products.
They say the proof is in the pudding. Just install it and then have a feel of it, and it's absolutely free. Test it out and just make your own decision. Our guest today has been Paul Lees, CEO and founder of Bespin Labs. Paul, thank you very much for today. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, and I've personally learned so much, and I believe the audience have also learned so much about Google Workspace and about your excellent product that you have over there.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So listeners can check out Bespin Labs. So the website is bespinlabs.com. And like you mentioned, Patronum, patronum.io. I guess that's correct.
Correct.
You can check them out, follow them on LinkedIn or the social channels everywhere as well. You can also follow the podcast, Data Pandas Consulting, on all socials, YouTube, LinkedIn, Spotify, TikTok, Facebook, wherever. And as we bring you industry insight and chat with industry leaders like Paul, stay tuned and you get to learn more as you go along. So Paul, thank you very much and have a nice day, and speak to you some other time.
Thank you, you too. And thanks for finding the time to spend some time talking to me.
Cheers. You're welcome.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.